Alert, alert, alert. This is for Russia and Europe. What I'm about to tell you is literally breaking news that just broke out in the last hour. I don't know where you are in the world, but you are going to want to listen to this video in its entirety because Putin just sent a warning to Europe. But this is odd because just a couple of weeks ago, at least in American news, we were seeing propaganda or information about how President Donald Trump would basically be the mediator, okay? He would be the one that ends the Russia and Ukraine war. So I was thinking, okay, that's great, I guess. End the Russia-Ukraine war, we can move on with different things in the world since this has been occurring since 2022. But it looks like that's not quite what's happening. In fact, it looks like Putin either reneged or never agreed on this deal in the first place. So let's talk about what this means for you and I, people across the world, because we have viewers from all over. Of course, North America, but the Philippines, Japan, Korea, of course, all across Africa, everywhere, India. Let's talk about this because this is crazy. This quite literally flew across my desk this morning. Get this. When Vladimir Putin looked directly into the camera and said, "If Europe wants war, we're ready," it was not a casual statement. It was a signal, a strategic, calculated, and chilling reposition in the global power structure as we know it. And if you've been paying attention to the shifts that are occurring in Europe, Africa, the Americas, and so on, even in the US economy, then you know this moment did not appear out of nowhere. It's the next domino in a much larger world issue that could go out right now. Now, when I did the deep research, my assistant handed it over to my desk, and the deep research actually shocked me because I don't really know much about Russian war history. I know a little about European war history and global war history, but what I uncovered really shocked me. So again, like this video, share it with 30 people, no matter where they are in the world, because if this thing pops off the way that the news stations and Putin make it seem like it could, and I'm gonna actually tell you about a few actions that happened between Europe and Russia just in the past couple of weeks that I didn't even realize, then this could literally mean World War III. And we all know in the age of AI, World War III is something that we do not want to have to go through. This affects all of us. Now, what makes this statement even more alarming is the fact that the major outlets like NBC, CBS, and local news networks push the same clip within the same hour. That only happens when there's a coordinated briefing or a strategic release of information to shape public perception. So no, this is not just news, this is messaging. And for global citizens, expats, remote workers, entrepreneurs, diaspora families preparing for 2026, it was a warning disguised as a headline. Listen, Europe is no longer a bystander, it's now the battlefield. If you are an expat in Europe, listen and hear me well. For 2 years, the narrative was Russia versus Ukraine. But with one sentence, Putin upgraded the conflict to Russia versus Europe. Russia's one country. He's calling out the entire continent of Europe. The single shift changes everything. It reframes the battlefield and extends the risk far beyond the Ukrainian border. But why would he do that right now? I mean, it's December 2nd or 3rd, right? Maybe it's the 3rd actually. We're on a new day. It's December 3rd. But Europe and Russia actually have a history of having these issues in winter months. Russia likes to have these issues in the winter, and I'm gonna get to that in just a moment. Here's the thing though. Europe has quietly crossed several red lines. The Western media doesn't want to tell you this. You're gonna have to find it on your own. You're gonna have to do your deep research. I like to use AI to do deep research and then find some sources, read Russian news outlets, read Chinese news outlets. It's a little difficult sometimes, but they do translate these news stories for you. And remember, even if you are in South Africa, if you are in Senegal, if you are in Egypt, no matter where you are on the continent or in the world, This particular battle would affect everybody if it's a Russia versus Europe scenario, because it's not truly just a Russia versus Europe scenario. Europe is obviously comprised of a lot of countries, over 27. They have the EU, they're quite unified. Russia is obviously comprised of just Russia, but remember, Russia is a part of BRICS, their economic conglomerate that is trying to hopefully get independence from Western currencies, i.e. the US dollar. Russia is a part of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And so these guys are the immediate people who would have to choose in this type of battle. And it would be a little bit of a draw for them to choose lines. It's not going to be that apparently clear. BRICS is rather new. But when you think of colonial ties, the French have colonial ties all throughout the world. Vietnam, African islands, West Africa. So it's not going to be as black and white as you think. It could be like people just kind of watching to see, I'd rather really stay neutral, but it could escalate because it's going to be an issue. Now, here's what Europe did secretly. Nobody knew. I know I didn't know. Okay, so Finland joined NATO, which is an alliance between a lot of Western countries that occurred after World War II, where they're unifying and saying, hey, we're going to stop World War III, or in the event, we're going to be unified together. But they had agreements with Russia that said that some of those countries that were not part of NATO, that are by Russia, even though they're European countries, maybe like Belarus, you have like Albania over there, you have Czechoslovakia, Slovenia. They were supposedly supposed to be more independent, so Russia wouldn't feel like they have all of this tension and issues near their border. So Finland joined NATO, giving NATO a direct 800-mile border with Russia. This would have been seen to Russia as an escalation. Sweden joined NATO. I didn't even know that. Expanding northern military coverage. I'm kind of neutral on that one. I mean, Sweden's not very close to Russia, but Sweden has clearly picked a side. NATO troops have increased rotations in Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Romania. The EU approved new weapons packages for Ukraine, supposedly while these peace talks were happening. So from Russia's point of view, Europe has already chosen a side and chosen escalation. Putin is the one that simply said it out loud, obviously to the EU, but also to the Russian citizens, to the Chinese citizens, to the North Korean citizens, to all the citizens on these various sides of the world that are going to choose their sides. Now, the winter pattern. Russia historically becomes more aggressive in winter seasons. They like to escalate in the winter. This is consistent with centuries of military history. They have winter campaigns that favor certain military supply routes. They strain Western logistics, obviously, because when you're literally fighting in the snow, your aircrafts are going in the cold air, your people are freezing. It's obviously going to complicate life a lot. And then they can put pressure energy on dependent EU nations, because remember, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger had already cut a lot of their exports to France. France was already dealing with energy issues. France was already dealing with economic issues. Germany was already dealing with political instability. The UK is already dealing with political instability. And you know, if Russia were to go all in on this thing, I'm not convinced that Europe would come out winning. I'm just not convinced. They did in previous times with America's help, but quite frankly, even if America hadn't helped, I'm not sure history would have went the way that it did. And I also wonder, while I was just looking into this, like, okay, President Trump has been very much like, if more wars escalate, he's going to try to mediate, but he wouldn't necessarily intercede. So I wonder if the U.S., with our President Donald Trump in office, would actually intercede at all, because we know at the top of the year he was having some interesting conversations with Denmark and Iceland and his European counterparts that weren't quite favorable for their relationship. It could be, I wonder, let me know down below what you think. This could be a situation where America's like, hey, we try and get these deals with Saudi Arabia and Dubai. We're kind of out of it. We're going to focus more on the Middle East. We're going to strengthen, or try to strengthen, I don't think it's going to be that successful, their relationship with Africa. It's a little bit too late for that. Russia and China are really the main foreign nations for the continent that actually have valuable relationships on the continent. And so this thing is just, it's going to be interesting. Nobody knows what exactly it could look like. But here's the winter message dropped when Europe is most vulnerable. The EU already has a couple of fears: winter gas shortages, high energy inflation, slowed industrial production, labor strikes, agriculture protests, supply chain disruptions in Germany and France, and a winter escalation from Russia on top of that. Suddenly, Europe becomes the new hot zone of economic and military risk, the way that everybody in the world looks at, oh, Congo, oh, Sudan, oh, it's so sad down there in those parts of the world. Europe could quite literally be that place where everybody's looking like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this just happened. But what this means for 2026, let's talk about it. See, the EU has a few plans. They're actually trying to stabilize and tighten up before the 2030 window. So they have their digital euro rollout, Euro payment system expansion, digital ID, instant payments law implementation. They have also the 19-country migration scrutiny, raising far-right political movements, agriculture and farming uprisings, immigration backlash in major capital cities. The EU itself is in a major tightening cycle financially, militarily, and politically. When a system tightens, external shocks like Putin's statement hit much harder because it means less flexibility, less resilience, less political unity, less ability to absorb conflict, and Putin knows this. He watches Europe the way a chess player studies his opponent. Oh, not for their moves, but for their weaknesses. And the US has also entered an election storm while Europe feels exposed. The United States is actually it's our first year having President Donald Trump back in office. We're having foreign policy paralysis, economic slowdown, rising debt concerns that are just out of this world. We're at $37 trillion in debt, and military recruitment shortages. I think for the Western nations, this is one of those scenarios you may just want to let Russia just kind of do what they want. If they want to have whatever countries over there, like, it's cool, let it go. Like, it's all right. Like, it's really okay. Because I really believe if they're up against Russia, North Korea, China, do y'all know how relentless North Koreans are? I mean, I watched some of the documentaries, watched some of the shows, watched some of the warnings, and it's like, their motivations to actually win a war are a bit different than Western motivation. See, the West is already, quote unquote, on top of the world. But when you're a nation that feels like you've been colonized, you have been ostracized, you have been sanctioned, you have always been the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak, then your motivations are a little bit different from a psychological perspective. Your motivation isn't to stay on the top. Your motivation is, we need to do this by any means necessary because these Westerners are ruining our life. Get this, Europe knows that America is distracted. Russia knows that America is divided. So Putin's statement wasn't just aimed at Europe, let's be quite honest. Europe and America are an extension of each other. Like, don't forget, like, don't play around like y'all don't know, okay? It was also a message to Washington. If you can't control Europe, then I will. That's the subcontext that Putin has placed out there publicly for the entire world to see. This is why you're seeing synchronized headlines across Western news outlets. They needed the public to see this moment to prepare the narrative for the next year of geopolitical instability. Now, if you're looking to move abroad in 2026, I would heighten that as quickly as possible. We always talk about this in the State of the Diaspora with our clients. So many of them have already moved to the continent of Africa, mostly the southeastern portion of Africa. That's where most of our clients are focused on coming. It's very rare that our clients are focused on West or East Africa for the time being due to all the instability. But I'll tell you what, the only countries I would look at in Africa, I'm gonna just be real with you, and I say the same thing. If I were to live in America again, there's only 3 states I would live in, period. Ohio, Florida, and Texas. Those are the only ones. And Florida's like a real, like, don't know. But in Africa, Mauritius, Botswana, Namibia, maybe a Rwanda, maybe, not sure. Rwanda's one where you still have to kind of watch. Mauritius, Botswana, Namibia, Seychelles is another one that just gets forgotten. Like, you want to be in the neutral territories that just get forgotten, don't have huge amounts of people on them. I live on an island that has 1.2 million people, so we don't have to feed 65 million people, 35 million people, 20 million people, 100 million people. We have to focus on feeding 1.2 million people, and we have strategic partners across Asia and Africa. The people out here, they know how to eat rice and beans. They know how to make soups. They know how to make it stretch, okay? The Mauritians, they know how to make it work. And I'm just glad to be in a society like that. But listen, if you are looking at moving abroad, you will definitely want to closely watch this and quicken your plans. That's why we have the Mature Adult Intensive, which takes place December 29th, the 4th cohort. We're literally going through a cohort right now. Now, the mature adults that ideally fit into this from our clients we've already had, they're people that are exhausted from doing all the research alone. They want to understand geopolitics. They do not care as much about lifestyle factors. They're not like, okay, I need to have skyscrapers and this cutesy thing over here and this like mall over here, although Mauritius has like 20 to 30, 40 malls, but that's not really their attraction. They want to know the risk factors. They want to understand geopolitics. They want to understand foreign policy. They want to understand foreign global finance and mobility, and these things are hard to do alone if you have not been outside of America for 6 years the way that we have, and given birth outside of America, about to give birth outside of America for the 3rd time. Such a blessing. All praises to the Most High in Yahushua's name. But listen, if that's you, check out the link in the description, because this really can be our last window to get things. Look, you may not be moving around the globe all like that come March 2026. If this is actually going to jump off in the way that Putin and Europe think it is, if this is actually going to go into crisis mode, there won't be a lot of movement for those of you in America or Europe. There will be movement throughout Africa. There will be movement throughout Africa and Asia, but there won't be movement throughout the Western world. The Western world will really get into a deeper recession, super depression, because the US and the Western world is already in a recession, but they're just not saying it right now. They're going to come back and tell you in 20 years. One of our mature adult intensive clients who is living in Mexico said, you guys are the only channel that talks about how important it is to be in neutral territory. Some protests were popping off in Mexico a couple of weeks ago, and she reported back and told us she could feel the tension in the air. She could feel that Americans weren't welcomed in Mexico anymore. She could feel the stares, and so she decided, let me start making my way towards Southeastern Africa, because Mexico just doesn't feel safe anymore. She could feel the heaviness and the tension. So again, if you're someone that is exhausted, you're feeling the tension where you're at anywhere on the globe, the Mature Adult Intensive may be for you. www.journeywithusmovetoafrica.com/services. Read the enrollment page and see if it's right for you. But here's the reality. Global mobility is entering a scary new era, one where war cycles shape where you live, how you hold money, how you travel, and if Russia escalates even slightly, visa policies change, border controls change. Schengen will have different travel rules. That's the Schengen zone in Europe, comprised of 25 to 27 European countries. Financial systems change. Refugees will have more pressure. The cost of living will change. Airline routes change. Insurance premiums. And yes, your long-term relocation plans. Before I end this video, I want to touch on something that I believe is interesting as well, because we were talking recently, and you're going to have already seen this video most likely, but I'll add it in the description, about the 19-country travel ban. We had like Afghanistan, Myanmar, Sierra Leone, Togo, Somalia, Sudan, some other countries across the world between the Middle East and Asia and Africa, who are no longer allowed to even move to America, period. Trump said he's banning third world immigration permanently because of the security risks in which a National Guard's woman and man were shot and unalived. I believe it was in Washington, D.C. So I think underlyingly what we're seeing is that these nations are actually slowly preparing for war. Because when you begin to shut down your borders to entire continents, or to at least a fourth of an entire continent, a fourth of another continent, or more than half of another continent, you're really saying, I can't trust anybody. It's like when you just feel threatened, you're shutting your house down, you're like, I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna protect those that are in my house. Don't know what y'all doing out there, but this is going to be a different type of society. This is going to be a different type of war zone that we go into. So it seems like President Trump already kind of has an idea of what's about to happen, but he's just not really saying it out loud. He doesn't want to come out and seem like he's the aggressor, which he's not in this situation. But at the same time, Europe, they crossed the line from Russia's point of view. Because they had an agreement, there wouldn't be too many NATO allies, okay? NATO allies. There wouldn't be too many European countries joining because Russia will feel threatened. Because again, Russia is one country. Europe is comprised, or I should say the European Union and NATO are comprised of multitudes of countries. NATO actually has America in it as well. I wonder if NATO has Japan as well. So these are things where it's like, hey, if Russia feels threatened to that extent, don't think that China's just going to be like, oh, okay. Don't think North Korea is just going to be like, oh, that's nice. Like that's not going to, it's just not going to happen. And so what you must do next, join the State of the Diaspora. We have another State of the Diaspora, the 15th edition, coming up in the next couple of weeks. Again, mature adult intensive State of the Diaspora for December. This could literally be the last time that you join and are literally able to exit America flawlessly or in peace. Because in times of war, just think. Now, we haven't really seen much war in our lifetime, have we, people? Our grandparents' generation has. Even our parents' generation didn't see much. But can you imagine, like, I just imagine flights probably wouldn't be going that many places. Buses, I mean, I guess you could bus down to Mexico. You may not want to because the cartels are probably going to be more aggressive in times of war. So this is really the time to audit your life and say, wait a minute, where do I want to be if this is really going to jump off like that? Me personally, I want to be in Africa. I want to be in Mauritius. That's where I want to be. That's the exact place on earth that I want to be. That's why I'm here, okay? Whew, it's a lot. In the State of the Diaspora, we're going to break down the safe versus unstable regions in Africa. We're going to break down the corruption index. Nobody wants to deal with corruption in World War III. That's just, it's too much. It's too much. You got bombs flying between Europe and Russia, and then somebody wants you to pay them $4,000. Who has time for that? No, we're not doing that in 2026. We're moving wisely, discerning the times, period. We're doing the cost of living modeling. We also have a list of the best bank accounts throughout Southeast Africa. Yes, across like multiple countries. These are banks that most people don't know. Most Americans had never even heard of. Most Americans think, oh, they have U.S. Bank in Mauritius. Oh, they have Citibank in Mauritius, and that's just not a fact. They have their own banks out here. They have their own banks in South Africa. They have their own banks in Kenya. They have their own banks in Tanzania. America does not stretch that far. I know a lot of you think it does. It does not. Sorry to hurt your feelings if you are of that belief. And if Europe is entering a new cycle of conflict, you need clarity. Check out the links in the description. Or if you're feeling this volatility and you're like, hey, this economy is ghetto, the jobs are ghetto, the Fed workforce is ghetto, everybody's fired. You're like, I need to be able to invest in a wise way. You can learn to trade with Harold, my husband. He has had about 12 clients in the past week. Like his calendar has been completely filled out because volatility equals opportunity if you know how to understand the market. See, here's the thing. We are not ones to tell you how to invest your money, how to allocate your money. We teach you for educational purposes only, so you can understand candlesticks, trade patterns, geopolitical trading, geopolitical timing on your entries, and how to avoid emotional investing. Conflict cycles always shake markets, but smart traders are going to position early. So even if the global economy is going down, you can still print your money in the market. Now, here's my final word for you. Putin did not issue a threat. He issued a timeline. Europe heard it. Washington heard it. The media amplified it. And now the diaspora must respond. Not with panic, but with strategy. And 2026 is going to reward those who can see the patterns before the world feels them. Shalom, shalom. I'll see you in the next video.